Welcome to another Coffee with Samso, where we speak with ASX companies and the guys who run the companies to share the stories. We're here at the UWA Club here in Crawley, in the University of Western Australia. We've got Scott Williamson back with us today. They've released their first sort of sustainability report. We've had conversations with Anna Craney prior, but it's always good to get the man back on Coffee with Samso to share his wisdom. Scott, look, give us an update of your take of your report.
Yeah, thanks, Noel. It's a really proud day today to announce this sustainability report. It's so much effort went into it from Anna and the team, and what it really outlines is our vision and I suppose puts a line in the sand and says, this is what we're going to achieve from a sustainability perspective. This is how we're going to do it. And I think very transparent as well about, okay, we've got some work to do here. We aren't at zero carbon yet. We need to move towards net zero by the time we're mining, and we can do that, and all the other great stuff that we're already doing. So I think it's a really proud moment for me, because when I sort of employed Anna, I said to her, the biggest job you've got is to put out our inaugural sustainability report, and I must admit I wasn't sure whether she's going to be able to achieve it, and she achieved it better than I could even dreamt of, because what she's delivered today is just an amazing start for us, and it shows our commitment to ESG and sustainability. But it's a great starting point, and we'll build on this, and it'll only get better from here.
I mean, in your the front part of the report, it talks about wanting to be world leaders, and you want to be the first in the space and things like that. Those are big sort of words, right? Which when I was reading, I must say, I thought, okay, look, they're putting a statement, bold statement. How do you guys sort of draw that picture? Because sometimes you make a statement that's so big, you thought, well, maybe, I don't know whether we can get it, you know? Where was the thinking at that point in time?
Yeah, I think if I go back to when we first came up with the theme of green nickel, some of the investors we spoke to had that sort of pushback and said, well, what makes you green? Why are you better than the rest? And it really comes back to the fact that we're in a jurisdiction that has the renewable power already there. We're using a sulfide ore body. We are leading the world with respect to the movement towards net zero nickel, and it's as simple as that. We looked at all of our peers in the industry, and they're all set up on dirty, tired infrastructure that's run on coal or diesel power. They just don't have the opportunity to lead like we do, because of the infrastructure that's already in place. So we're lucky in a way, but it was a decision early on to purchase this asset because of that renewable power benefit that came with it. So yeah, we're very confident we're leading the world with respect to green nickel, but also I want to lead the world with respect to the way we operate with our local communities and the work that Anna does on the social part as well, but also on the corporate governance. We understand that there's a movement towards a highest level of corporate governance, coming from a junior explorer into what will be a producer. There's a bit of work to be done on that front as well, but we want to lead the way with respect to corporate governance, particularly around diversity. We're very lucky to say that we've got a lot of diversity within our ethnic minorities on site as well. Gender diversity is something we're really big on. We're doing very well at the Hanoi office level and the head office level. We've got a bit of work to do at the site level, But yeah, we want to lead the world in all three of the ESG components.
I remember when we had our first discussion and I created this title saying green nickel, and we had that conversation in the coffee Samso. I didn't see a lot of narrative out there after that about green nickel. I think, was that the moment where people were sort of going, it's nice of you to use the word green nickel, but does that exist? Was that what was happening then?
Yeah, we definitely jumped all in, and we trademarked it, and I think the industry is still trying to work out what green nickel is, and we have an opportunity to really set the standard, and I think over time we'll probably work with groups like the Nickel Institute to actually formalise what is green nickel, because it has to be an industry-wide commitment towards green nickel. When we did it, we sort of jumped all in, and then, but we do have to make sure that the industry is on board with this, because it's a movement. I think unfortunately, like I said, there's a lot of our peers just don't have the same the same ability to say that, because it's just not green for a lot of them. And where does green nickel kick in? Well, maybe we have to set a carbon standard, and a carbon intensity per nickel unit is maybe where it heads to really, anything below that is green. I think that's probably where it'll go, and we're keen to help the industry move in that direction.
I know when we did the series for Blackstone, all the parts, talking to different stakeholders and the custodians of those divisions, I suddenly realised that I was made aware that maybe you guys are closer to having that renewable energy part than before. I must admit that. And suddenly the whole green nickel thing was, man, this thing is really going to happen. And then we started talking about ESG, and with this report, I guess is to sort of putting it on the table, making it as transparent as this is going to happen. It must have made, well, in terms from the corporate side, I guess let's talk about the corporate side. How has that helped you in delivering the message? Is that been a part or major part or small part of your conversations?
Yeah, it's interesting. In the early sort of years of when we acquired this project, our focus was really just to find nickel, any nickel. We knew it was going to be green because we already had the hydroelectric.
Don't tell them all that though.
It was very much about, let's feed into this demand that's coming for the lithium-ion battery, and the fact that we were moving into that space was a really great story. And also with respect to the investors weren't, 2.5, 3 years ago, they weren't as focused on the ESG compliance, particularly at the junior end, as they are now. So it was, once we started bringing out this commitment towards ESG, that's where we were able to attract groups like Fidelity. And we're now starting to attract even bigger names in the institutional investor space that are 100% focused on ESG. So it's been great to open up our investor network into those bigger names. But more interestingly, it's when we first started on this nickel journey, our downstream partners and potential partners, they were also, all they were worried about was nickel. It's only in the last 6 to 12 months where they've come back to us and said, okay, we understand what you're saying now. We actually need green nickel. The OEMs have come to us and they've said, okay, we can't take dirty nickel out of Indonesia. The OEMs are going to be keeping us accountable. We need your nickel, which is green, and we need a lot of it. And they, unfortunately, these guys are up against it. They've gone back to these OEMs and said, well, if we can't get our nickel from Indonesia, well, it's not looking good. Basically.
I'll beep that part
Unfortunately, it makes it very difficult for them. But we just need to scale up and get it to a point where we can deliver as much green nickel as the demand that's required. We're up against it as an industry. We need Indonesia to clean up and make their nickel green, because we need nickel laterites. We need every bit of nickel on the planet to be green.
I mean, that's really where I see a lot of things headed, right? The whole, I mean, I think I had a conversation with Anna saying that, look, somewhere along the line, it'll be like a blockchain thing where the top guy says, I need green nickel, I need everything to be green, the whole process needs to be green, right from the moment where you discover that there's nickel to when you drill, you resource, you mine, etc. But I know you just mentioned that more and more names are coming in, but do you see this embracement from market as 100%, or is it still sort of 85 heading to 100, but still around that level, or are they all at 100%?
Yeah, it's not 100% yet, because we've still got the groups that can't find any nickel, and so they'll take any nickel they can find because they've got customers and orders to fill. So there's a number of groups that are out there just hunting any nickel, and then you've got the leaders that are saying, and that's really driven by the OEMs and the premium brands in that car manufacturing space. They're saying, okay, we're going to lead the way, and we're only going to source green nickel. So back on the blockchain, we've engaged Circular, which is an expert in that field, and they're also working with Trafigura, which is our feedstock partner, and they track it all the way from the block model all the way through the supply chain. The OEMs, so the bigger names in the car manufacturing, have also signed up to Circular. So it's working. So you've got the whole supply chain there looking at these blockchain opportunities. So what will happen ultimately is you'll buy your Tesla car and you'll QR scan the code on the dashboard, and it'll tell you that nickel's come all the way from the Tarkwar Nickel project in Vietnam. It has a CO2 of whatever impact. It'll have a social governance impact score, social compliance, and governance as well. So you'll have an ESG score for every car based on that traceability all the way back to the block model.
How of a reality is that? I mean, that sounds like, the 3 red ticks, Australian standard and all this kind of stuff. And will there be 2 pricing, like green nickel and not green nickel?
I'm not too worried whether there will be or not. I think the question will be more around which projects will get developed. So which ones will find the capital. And I'm confident the green nickel projects will be developed first, because of this demand coming for the greener products. And because of that, our funding structure will be more beneficial, because what the premium will get is the funding structures that we'll be able to attract, which will be better than the dirty nickel players. So the dirty nickel players will probably still get built and funded, but they won't get funded on the same competitive terms that we'll get funded on. So we'll be able to, our weighted average cost of capital will be much lower because of our green credentials, and that's more important than any premium, because once we're in production, we're on our way.
Funny you said that. Interesting though. Are you saying in future that the cost for you to bring out your nickel will be comparatively less or more because you got more ESG compliance, that you have to do more?
So the cost of ESG is not that significant. But the weighted average cost of the capital, because we can attract groups like Fidelity and BlackRock and these bigger names they're going to write the big checks, the $100 million checks, right? And then you've got the OEMs saying, I need green nickel. They're the ones that are going to write the maybe billion-dollar checks if we needed it. So our weighted average cost of capital will be lower because we'll be able to get better terms from those downstream partners on the way we fund it. The cost of moving into this net zero carbon product is, like I said previously, it's a little bit extra on the capex, but the operating cost is lower. So because it's more efficient, so we're happy to hit it with more capex up front to get the operating cost benefit. Because of that benefit we're getting from the weighted average cost of the capital, which is attracted to that green product.
Yeah, I guess the operating cost will be affected by the fact that your end products has more demand, better pricing than the so-called not green nickel. I mean, when I look at the Blackstone story, and a lot of people may think we're biased because obviously we're having this conversation, but you got hydropower, just happens to be there, so that's conveniently there. You've got a nice deposit, conveniently there. The rest you manufacture, meaning you create the downstream process and you find the partners. That whole chain of events are not something you find everywhere. And I'm coming back to your point that there's a lot of people who can't find this green nickel. To me, in my simple mind, thinking, this problem is actually very big. Am I correct in that summation?
Yeah, it's a major problem for the industry. It's a major problem for the OEMs because there will be this movement towards the customer wanting to know. Yeah, it's a real serious issue. It defeats the whole purpose of building an electric vehicle if you're burning carbon to produce the product, the ingredients for the battery. So if we bring it back to our main issue is some of the products that we have to bring into our supply chain, like cobalt and manganese. So our scope 3 emissions, which is the inputs that we have to bring from other mines, are our biggest risk to not being able to achieve net zero. So we now have to really look at our supply chains as well, and so the OEMs are looking at their supply chains, but we're looking at, okay, well, what sort of carbon footprints on our cobalt and manganese, our acid, all our explosives, every part of our mining business, we need to be counting carbon as well, and we're on that track now. We're using a group called Minviro, and they do a life cycle assessment of our product, and what we're seeing is that we need to be very focused on some of these other inputs that come in. But yeah, it's a major problem because those groups that are supplying us, they're not counting carbon, and so they're not focused on it. And the whole industry needs to be counting carbon now, and it's unfortunately we're up against it, and particularly the fact that all the major players in the nickel space haven't built this into their supply chains.
So you're talking about the guy that's supplying manganese and cobalt, the guy who's mining it somewhere else needs to be on the same level as you.
Yeah, and we'll be saying to them, all right, you need blockchain technology. Ideally, you're working with this group Circular. You need to be working with this other group Minviro, counting carbon all the way through, because ultimately it affects our business, and we won't buy your products until you've done that.
Interesting. In the sense of so is this coming from you guys, or is this also been coming from the supplier side?
It's being pushed by ourselves because we have this goal of net zero from day one, and so we're really pushing it, because really it's I remember the day that Elon Musk came out at his AGM and his nickel day, and he said, we need all the nickel you can find, we need it to be environmentally sustainable. It was basically from that day where I knew that he was the leader, we had to follow that, and we had to deliver into that, and we're so lucky that we can achieve that very quickly, but only with a sustained effort and a focus on it. And it's driven by ourselves, but knowing that ultimately someone like Tesla will find us and go, okay, these guys are on the right track.
When we look at, like, your comments about what Elon Musk said, we need this, you guys followed and says, okay, this is what we're going to do, everything else. Can someone standing a bit further back saying, mate, are we overdoing this ESG? Because, we might not be able to get it because, like you said, you got this other components, and so does he, have other components where they haven't even started doing this, right? So is that a fair statement, do you think? Or is that something that you guys already have factored in and say, well, this is going to happen? And as you said, right, the day you heard that, you made a commitment, and that's the drive. So how does that comment fit into your picture?
Yeah, I think it doesn't really matter if we can't or we can. We just have to. It's so important that we do this as an industry. The question is how quickly we can do it, and we're confident we can do it quicker than, because of our agility and the fact that we're a smaller organisation, we can do this quicker than anyone else, and we will lead the way with things like electrification of mining equipment, and we will lead the way with respect to net zero carbon, and it is a matter of time, and whether we can or we can't, we just got it. It's so important that we do it, and we want to set the example for the rest of the industry.
I think it's I guess a similar question to when going back only a year and a half, 2 years, I had a conversation on Coffee with Samso about the issues with diesel particulates and nanoparticulates and things like that, and we were talking about how people should go start looking at electrification of mining fleet. Today, I'm hearing more and more of companies already been testing for a while, and they're about to take the next fleet of mining equipment, electric mining equipment. That speed, do you see that speed sort of like a steady, or do you think at some point it's just going to exponential because it's like, oh, he's doing it, well, I might as well do it, and then, but at the same time, the cost has also changed because the guy who's building it can build 50 instead of 2. Do you see that happening?
Yeah, it'll happen exponentially. It's not happening yet, but what will happen is the investors will get on the investor calls and say, when are you moving to electrification of your fleet? Because we need a net zero company that we're to be investing in, and so these bigger groups like Fidelity and BlackRock and a number of those other major institutions will be getting on those investor calls and saying, okay, enough's enough. When are you electrifying the fleet? Because we need a target and you need to deliver, and so that's when it starts to really happen. It'll get driven by the investors, and that's not that far away. Maybe 2 or 3 years time, I think it'll just take off.
I've heard many people say to me, oh, look, and we've had this conversation before, that there is capital that are just saying, if you guys are not going green, or already green, or have a path going green, don't bother calling us. How true is that?
Yeah, there's definitely a bit of that already, and that's driven by a lot of these funds that only focus on ESG compliant. So there are funds out there that just seeking opportunities to invest in highest ESG compliance, and so they're already out there, those groups. We don't go seeking those groups. We think that they'll find us.
Because there are very few of you, though.
Yeah, they'll find us, but we sort of our focus is any investor that wants to get into a story that's linked to the revolution, which is EVs, and what EVs actually bring, which is, we think, a better future for our children and our grandchildren. So it's a great theme, but we're taking it one step further and saying, well, if we're going to build the ingredients for the EV, let's do it with a net zero carbon footprint.
I mean, going back to your report, your sustainability report, I think it's when I see it, I'm seeing I have never seen one before, but when I saw it, I thought this is very comprehensive. This is and being put out there in the public, you're making a statement saying this is what we're going to do. First thing, from an investor point of view, I'm thinking, okay, these guys are basically sort of backing the fact that they're going to deliver a product at the end, but they're going to deliver that green product, and this is what they're doing by putting it on the table. How are people? What are the conversations you're having when you discuss this with them?
Yeah, so what we did at the start of the process is we did a materiality assessment, and we interviewed all of our stakeholders, and that goes from the chief of the local village all the way through to your major institutions. All of the stakeholders were interviewed. So we went through that process of discovery of, okay, well, where are we at? And I think the feedback we got was, particularly from the investors and even the communities, was we're sick of greenwashing. We're sick of box ticking, sustainability reports, all the bullshit that we all know about. We want transparency, we want honesty, and we want real targets to be hit and met. And so we took that on board, and so we've been very transparent. Like, our safety, that last year was okay, but our safety this year is not so good. So we've got some work to do on the safety aspects. So we've made it very clear in this report of the areas we need to focus on. And although we've got a great story on the green side, there's other areas that, like safety, for instance, where we've got a bit of work to do. So it's very transparent, so it's not greenwashing. It's raw, and I think it ticks all those boxes, and we're not just box ticking. We're actually looking at, okay, well, what do our stakeholders want, and we're actually ticking them off. And a lot of the time, they're saying we're just sick of greenwashing. We're so proud of a company like yourselves to lead the way. We had some really good feedback, but we also had some really, I suppose, focused discussions around things like corporate governance and compliance as well. That's a really key risk for us, is making sure we get that corporate governance piece right.
Oh, that's good. I mean, a lot of this come out from corporate, and this is done in the office, and with a few assumptions, right? It's good to hear that you guys are on the ground, so to speak. But look, Scott, it's a big mouthful to say, in a sustainability report. I've been up all night practicing it, so I don't stutter. But what's the give us the last words. What does it mean for the company, and where does it go from here?
Well, I think the really exciting part is that even the fact that we've even got a sustainability report, a company like ourselves, only a year ago we were a junior minnow, and now we've put out our inaugural sustainability report because we want to show how important this part of the business is to every one of us. And that's why we brought in Anna early as well. We brought in the experts in this field. They've delivered a great product, but it's a starting point. We think that we can do it even better next year. But most importantly, we've outlined in that document what we're going to achieve, how we're going to achieve it, and we've been very honest about, we've got some areas to work on, but we're not out there to greenwash. We just want to get on with it, produce a green nickel product, which we think that there's not many out there that can say they can do that.
Oh, fantastic. Well, look, Scott, it's always a great conversation, and this is no different. Look, going forward, I hope we follow the journey in exciting times to come. The next big thing is, I assume, is the DFS. Is that correct?
PFS for upstream, is soon, definitely.
Okay. All right. Scott, till then, thank you.
Great, thank you.